I had been on the road almost 8 hours when my son opened his own front door, stepped outside, and shut it behind him before I ever saw my granddaughter's face. Ryan would not meet my eyes. "Dad," he said, "Vanessa only wants family here today." For a second I thought I had misheard him. This was Lily's first birthday. 3 weeks earlier, Ryan himself had called and begged me to come. In the bed of my truck sat a wooden rocking horse I had spent 7 weeks restoring by hand, the same horse his mother and I had built for him the year he turned 1. I looked past my son toward the driveway. Vanessa's parents were there. Her sister was there. So were half a dozen cars I recognized from their street. Apparently family had a very specific meaning that day, and I did not fit inside it. I handed Ryan the horse and left without making a scene. 10 minutes later, at a red light 2 miles from his subdivision, I remembered Vanessa's gift still sitting under a moving blanket on my passenger floor. So I turned around. That was when I saw one curved wooden runner sticking straight up out of the trash cart beside their garage. The horse I had rebuilt with my own hands was wedged sideways in a bin of paper plates and torn wrapping paper. Through the front window I could see the whole party laughing while Vanessa's parents unveiled an enormous playhouse with real shutters and a plastic mailbox. My son stood there filming it. I lifted my horse out of the garbage, wiped the frosting off the ribbon, and drove away without knocking. That birthday was only the beginning. Before it was over, I would learn who had been lying, how long it had been going on, and why my own son was so certain I would simply forgive it. Months later, I came back with one more gift. When Ryan opened the box, Vanessa stopped smiling entirely. "My name is Walter Kessler." I was 67 years old, a retired master carpenter from a stretch of farmland outside Dayton, Ohio, and I had spent most of my life believing that if you built something carefully enough, a chair, a marriage, a family, it was supposed to hold. My wife, Margaret, everyone called her Maggie, had been gone 5 years. Since losing her, my son Ryan and my granddaughter Lily had become the part of my family I held onto tightest, sometimes tighter than I should have. 3 weeks before Lily's first birthday, Ryan called while I stood at my workbench, his voice cutting through the hum of the old shop fan. "Dad, you're coming, right? She only gets one first birthday." I told him I wouldn't miss it for anything on this earth. By then I had already started restoring something kept wrapped in a moving blanket for 3 decades. The little wooden rocking horse Maggie and I built in the basement of our first house, when we believed we could make anything if we just stayed up late enough. Ryan was turning 1, money was thin, and store-bought horses cost more than we could justify. Maggie found a simple pattern in a woodworking magazine and brought it home in her purse. "You can build this," she told me, laughing, because she had more faith in my hands than I did. I shaped the body out of maple. Maggie sanded the handles at the kitchen table after Ryan had gone down for the night, and she insisted on brushing the final coat herself, even though she left a faint stroke mark near the saddle that used to bother me for years. Eventually I stopped seeing it as a flaw. It was hers. When Ryan outgrew the horse, Maggie would not let me give it away. We wrapped it in a moving blanket and carried it from house to house for more than 30 years. After Lily was born, I thought about building something new, cleaner, without a single old scar in the wood. But that was not what I wanted to give her. I wanted her to have something her own father had once wrapped both hands around before he was old enough to remember it. So I spent 7 weeks taking the old horse apart without stripping away its history, replacing what had gone unsafe, tightening every joint, refinishing the wood, and leaving the small dents that belonged to Ryan's childhood exactly where they were. I made something for Vanessa too, a walnut keepsake box with 12 compartments, one for each month of Lily's first year. I wrapped it separately and tucked it under the same blanket in the truck bed. The drive from Dayton to Charlotte took just under 8 hours with fuel, coffee, and 2 stops to stretch my back. I'd booked a small hotel 10 minutes from Ryan's house, so Vanessa wouldn't have to worry about sheets or breakfast or one more body in a house with a 1-year-old. I arrived a little before 3, changed my shirt in the hotel lot, checked the ribbon on the horse one last time, and drove over feeling almost foolishly excited. The way you feel right before you find out you shouldn't have been. Balloons were tied to the mailbox. I could hear music before I even reached the porch steps. Then Ryan opened the door. He did not smile. He stepped outside fast and pulled the door shut behind him like he was containing something. "Hey, Dad," he said. I looked at him, then at the closed door behind him. "Everything all right?" He rubbed the back of his neck the way he used to when he was 13 and about to tell me he'd broken something. "Yeah, it's just Vanessa's a little overwhelmed today." Behind the door I heard several people laughing, easy and unhurried. "I can stay out of the way," I told him. "I've got the hotel. I just wanted to see Lily, give her the horse, maybe stay for cake." Ryan looked toward the driveway instead of at me. "That's the thing, Dad. Vanessa wants it small today. Lily's been around a lot of people lately and she doesn't want to overdo it." I followed his glance. Robert and Carol Whitfield's SUV sat near the curb. Vanessa's sister Megan's crossover sat behind it. There were at least 3 more cars I did not recognize. "Looks like you've already got a few people," I said. Ryan exhaled through his nose. "They're different. They're around her all the time." I waited. He knew exactly what I was waiting for. Finally, he said it plainly. "She only wants family here, Dad. There are sentences that hurt because they're shouted, and there are sentences that hurt because they're spoken so quietly you can't pretend you misheard them." That one landed soft, and it landed all the way through. I looked at my son, the boy I had once carried sleeping in from the car, the man who had called me 3 weeks earlier and told me not to miss this day for anything. "I thought I was family," I said. His face tightened immediately. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make this harder than it has to be." He glanced back at the door like it might open on its own. "Please just understand. We'll do something tomorrow. Come by when things are calmer." I stood there long enough to know he wasn't going to change his mind, so I walked back to the truck and lifted the horse out myself. Ryan came down and took it from me. For 1 second I thought he might recognize it. He ran his palm over one of the handles, but his face never changed. "You made this?" he asked. "I restored it," I said. I almost told him the rest right there. I didn't. "It's for Lily," I said instead. "Okay. Thanks, Dad." He carried it toward the house without looking back, and I got in the truck and drove away. I had gone maybe 10 minutes when I reached for my hotel key and saw the corner of Vanessa's wrapped box still under the blanket on the passenger floor. I stared at it at the next stoplight. Mailing it later would have been easier. But I had built it for her birthday weekend specifically, and whatever had just happened at that door, I did not want to punish Vanessa by withholding something I had already made with her in mind. So I turned the truck around. I told myself I would leave it on the porch and go, nothing more. When I pulled back into the neighborhood, I parked farther down the street so Ryan would not think I'd come back to argue. I carried Vanessa's box up the driveway on foot. The big wheeled trash cart beside the garage sat open from party cleanup, and something curved above the rim caught the corner of my eye. For half a second my mind simply refused to name it. Then I saw the walnut handle. I set the box on the hood of my truck and walked over. The horse was wedged sideways between a black garbage bag and a collapsed stack of gift boxes. Long habit told my hand to move before my mind caught up. I photographed it exactly where it lay before I touched a single piece. It was heavier coming out of that bin than it had been carrying up the porch steps 2 hours before. I wiped a smear of frosting off the ribbon with my handkerchief and laid the horse gently in my truck bed. I still had Vanessa's package in my hand when laughter rolled out from the house again. The front picture window faced the driveway directly. I didn't need to creep or hide. From right where I stood I could see straight into the living room. More than a dozen people crowded near the fireplace. Vanessa beside Lily while Robert and Carol pulled a sheet off an enormous brightly painted playhouse. Everyone clapped. Vanessa covered her mouth and hugged her mother. Ryan stood a few feet off, filming the whole thing, grinning behind the screen. Nobody looked toward the driveway. Nobody knew I was standing there. I looked down at the wrapped box in my hands, then back at the horse behind me in the truck bed. I did not knock. I put Vanessa's gift back under the blanket, closed the tailgate, and drove toward the hotel. I had not even reached the main road before my phone chimed in the cup holder. At the next light I glanced down. Ryan had written, "Thanks for understanding, Dad. We'll just tell everyone the drive got to be too much for you." By the time I pulled into the hotel lot, The sky had gone the color of wet slate, and that message was still sitting on my screen like something I hadn't finished understanding. I carried the rocking horse into the room myself. One rocker was scratched pale where it had scraped the plastic bin, and a faint smear of dried frosting still clung near the front handle. I set it beside the little desk under the window, then placed Vanessa's unopened package next to it. For a long while I did nothing except stand there and look at both gifts, side by side, the way you look at two pieces of a story that don't fit together yet. That horse had been part of my family longer than Ryan had been able to speak in full sentences. Carried wrapped from house to house for 30 years because Maggie wouldn't part with it. I had spent 7 weeks bringing it back for Lily instead of building something new and flawless, because I wanted her to have something her father had once held on to with both hands. I had imagined telling him all of that with Lily on the floor nearby. Instead, the horse was standing in a rented hotel room because my own son had put it in a trash cart before his daughter's party was even finished. My eyes moved to Vanessa's package. I'd built that box, so Lily's birthday wouldn't become one more day where everyone forgot the woman who'd carried the first year on her own back. Under the lid, I'd tucked a note saying people noticed first smiles and first steps, but almost nobody noticed the woman up at 3 with a fever, still having to look fine at a desk job the next morning. I knew the transition back to work hadn't been easy on her. I'd worried more about the note sounding sentimental than whether she'd like the box. Now she didn't even know it existed. My phone rang a little after 8. Ryan, his voice almost relieved. "You settled in?" "I'm at the hotel," I said. Vanessa was stressed, he went on. Lily was overstimulated. There were too many moving parts. There were a lot of people in that house, I said. That's not the point. It was the point when you told me the party had to stay small. He sighed. Can we not turn this into something bigger than it was? What was it then? I asked. Bad timing, he said. Honestly, the easiest thing is just to tell people the drive got to be too much for you. Nobody needs the details. There it was again, not an apology, a solution, and the solution required me to become the reason I'd been missing from my own granddaughter's first birthday. For most of Ryan's life, I'd been good at smoothing rough edges, swallowing a complaint, softening a story. That night, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I had no appetite for it at all. No, I said. Ryan went quiet. No, what? If anybody asks me, I'm going to tell them I came. Dad, you know what I mean. Yes, I said. I think I finally do. He tried once more to explain that Vanessa needed calm, that everyone would forget by next week. I told him I was tired and ended the call before he could turn my refusal into another argument I'd have to lose quietly. The next morning I loaded both gifts back into the truck and started north. Somewhere past the Ohio line, I stopped for coffee and checked my phone. The family group chat already had a dozen new photographs from Lily's party. Underneath them, Ryan had written, "Thanks to everyone who made her first birthday so special." Dad couldn't manage the trip after all, but hopefully next time. I read that sentence twice. My son had not simply shut a door on me. He had already started rewriting what happened on the other side of it. By the time I got home that afternoon, Ryan's message had collected a row of sympathetic replies. People telling him they hoped I felt better, saying 8 hours was a long drive at my age, promising there would be other birthdays. I read every one of them sitting at my own kitchen table, with my truck keys still in front of me. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Diane, Maggie's younger sister. "Walter, are you all right? Ryan said you couldn't make the trip. You should have told me you were feeling poorly." My first instinct was embarrassingly familiar. I typed, "I'm fine, just got tired and decided not to push myself." It would have ended things cleanly. Diane would worry less. Ryan would keep his story. Vanessa wouldn't be embarrassed, and everyone could move along without one uncomfortable question hanging over the family. My thumb hovered over send. Then I pictured the rocking horse wedged between a garbage bag and a heap of torn wrapping paper, and I deleted the sentence. I wrote instead, "I made the drive. Ryan asked me to leave when I arrived, nothing more. No accusation, no photograph, no mention of the trash cart." I read it once and sent it before I could talk myself out of it. Deanne replied almost instantly. "What?" Then another message. "He told everybody you never got there." I set the phone face down on the table. I knew how families worked. One honest sentence could travel through relatives faster than 10 polite lies ever could. By early evening, Vanessa called. Walter, no greeting at all. What exactly are you telling people? The truth, if they ask. I said. I didn't call Diane, she called me. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid, Vanessa said. What were you trying to avoid? I asked. Drama, around Lily's birthday. I didn't create what happened at your front door, I said. You showed up after we'd made it clear we wanted things controlled, she said. Ryan asked me 3 weeks ago to come, I said. A pause, long enough that I heard it clearly. Plans changed, she said. Lily's been around too many people. I'm her mother. I get to decide what I'm comfortable with. I never said you didn't, I answered. Then why are you telling everybody we threw you out? Because Ryan asked me to leave, I said. You make it sound cruel, she said. How would you like me to make it sound, I asked. I have boundaries, Walter, she said. You don't get to override them because you drove a long way. I'm trying to understand the boundary, I said. Ryan told me the party had to stay small because Lily had been around too many people. Yes. Your parents were there, they see her constantly. Your sister was there, she's family. There were more than a dozen people in that living room. Vanessa. I saw it through the window myself, silence. Then colder. Were you standing outside watching us? I came back because I'd forgotten the gift I made for you, I said. That much was true. And for a moment I wondered if she would ask what gift. She didn't. You should have left when Ryan asked you to, she said. I did, I said. Then leave it there. I told her if he hadn't gone and told everyone I never came at all. Another silence, different from the first. She had run out of explanations that matched what I had actually seen. When she spoke again, she changed direction entirely. Maybe we all just need some space, she said. I knew exactly what that meant. She never said Lily's name, but I knew Sunday video calls had become part of the shape of my week. Sometimes Lily only stared at the screen and slapped at Ryan's phone. Sometimes she laughed at the same ridiculous clicking sound Maggie used to make for babies. I had pictures of her first tooth, her first trip to the zoo, the afternoon she fell asleep mid-bite in her high chair. None of that belonged to me by right. Ryan and Vanessa controlled every doorway between Lily and me, and they both knew its space. From what? I asked. From this pressure, she said, from people questioning us. From you turning one uncomfortable afternoon into something the whole family has to relitigate. I answered a question honestly, I said, and now everybody's involved because of the story you told first. I could hear Lily somewhere behind her. A small excited squeal, and it went through me faster than anything Vanessa had said all evening. Suddenly, the easiest words in the world were sitting right there on my tongue. I could have said, forget it, I'm sorry. Tell everyone I misunderstood. I could have bought a kind of peace in under 10 seconds. I very nearly did. Then I understood exactly whose comfort I would be purchasing and what I would be spending to buy it. I haven't called anyone, I said instead. I haven't insulted you. I haven't asked anybody to choose a side. But I am not going to tell people I stayed home when I didn't. Then don't be surprised if we pull back for a while, she said. My hand tightened around the phone. That's your decision, I told her. She seemed to wait for me to retreat one more time. I didn't. Fine, she said, and hung up. I sat alone at that table long after the screen had gone dark, understanding for the first time that telling the truth might cost me the one person in this whole mess who had done absolutely nothing wrong. My granddaughter. The next morning I uncovered the horse in the shop and set it under the strongest light over my bench. The scratch along the rocker wasn't deep, but it ran through the finish in a pale line that irritated me every time my eyes crossed it. I had repaired hundreds of pieces of furniture in my life, and I knew that kind of damage was almost always easier to fix than whatever mistake had caused it. Running my thumb along the scrape, I thought about how many times I'd done exactly that for Ryan, fixed the damage and never made him sit with the mistake. The neighbor's broken window at 13, paid for and apologized for myself. The dent in my old sedan, where I let him pay a little, then told him it was enough. Missed dinners, promises to Maggie that became my job to explain away. At the time I called it protecting my son. Standing in that workshop at 67, I had to admit I'd protected him from the one thing he needed most, the plain discomfort of making things right himself, Maggie had noticed it long before I did. "Walter, you cannot keep sanding every rough edge off that boy's life," she used to tell me. I'd smile and say that was just what fathers did. She'd shake her head, "No, fathers teach their sons to sand their own." After she died, that distinction got harder to hold on to. In that first year alone, hearing his voice was often the only thing that still connected the house to the life I used to have. I'd grown so afraid of losing what was left of my family that I started making peace before anyone had even asked. That morning, with Vanessa's warning about space still fresh in my ears, I picked up the phone and opened Ryan's name, half ready to end the whole thing myself, to tell him I didn't want Lily caught in the middle, that maybe we should all just start over. My thumb was almost to the call button when another call came through instead. Carol Whitfield, Vanessa's mother, had never once called me directly in all the years I'd known her. We were friendly enough at holidays, but our conversations had always stayed inside whatever room they started in. I answered. "Carol, I hope I'm not bothering you, Walter," she said, sounding uncertain in a way I hadn't heard from her before. "No, what's going on?" I asked. "I wanted to ask you myself instead of hearing it third hand from 3 different people," she said. I sat down on the stool beside my bench. "All right," I said. "Why did Ryan tell us you refused to come to Lily's birthday?" For a moment I genuinely thought I had misheard her. "Refused?" "Vanessa told us the drive had gotten to be too much for you, that you weren't comfortable making the trip anymore," Carol said. She hesitated. "She also said you'd been unhappy with some of the choices they've made for Lily, that you didn't approve of how they were doing things." I looked over at the horse. "Did she say what choices?" I asked. "Not specifically," Carol said. She made it sound like there'd been tension building for a while. "I actually asked whether we should push the cake back later in the day so you'd have more time to get there. Vanessa told me no, that you'd already decided." My grip tightened around the phone. I had been told Vanessa wanted a tiny, quiet gathering. Her own parents had been told I had decided not to attend at all. 2 entirely different explanations, both convenient depending on who happened to be listening. "Carol," I said carefully, "Ryan asked me 3 weeks before the birthday to come. I made the drive. He met me at the door and asked me to leave." Complete silence on her end. "You were there," she finally said. "At the house?" "Yes," I said. "Then why would Vanessa tell us you'd decided not to come at all?" "That's something I'm starting to wonder myself," I told her. Carol exhaled slowly. "Walter, I'm sorry. Robert and I honestly thought you'd changed your mind. We expected you. We were never trying to have some party that excluded you." I believed her. The surprise in her voice was too immediate to have been rehearsed. "You don't owe me an apology," I said. "Somebody owes you an explanation, though." She paused, then said, "I'm going to call Vanessa. I want to hear from her directly why she told us something different than what actually happened." I almost told her not to. The old instinct rose up fast. Keep everyone calm, keep the disagreement small, don't let this get any bigger than it already was. This time I let the instinct pass right through me without acting on it. "That's between you and her," I said. "All I can tell you is what happened to me." We hung up a few minutes later. I stayed on that stool a long while, staring at my phone. Almost exactly 10 minutes passed before the screen lit up again. Ryan had written, "Dad, why are you talking to Vanessa's mother?" I read it once, then looked at the rocking horse standing under the shop light, and understood all at once that the lie had existed before I ever reached his front door. I did not answer his text right away. For several minutes I stood at the workbench with the phone in my hand, reading the same 11 words over and over. "Dad, why are you talking to Vanessa's mother?" There was something in the wording itself that bothered me. Not what did Carol say, not is something wrong. He wanted to know why 2 people who had apparently been handed different versions of the same afternoon were suddenly comparing notes. I called him. He answered on the second ring, tired already. "Dad, seriously, what are you doing talking to Carol?" "Because she called me," I said. "This is exactly what Vanessa didn't want," he said. "What did Vanessa want?" I asked. "Or what did you want?" Those aren't the same question anymore. He didn't answer that directly, just kept repeating that she wanted the day kept simple, kept calm. Vanessa wanted, Vanessa needed, Vanessa decided. The same 3 words that had been doing all his talking for years. Vanessa's voice came in close behind him. Walter, this needs to stop. No, you're trying to make Ryan choose sides, she said. I'm asking him to speak for himself, I told her. You've been judging every decision I've made since Lily was born, she said. What decisions? I asked. Going back to work, for one. You told Ryan I was selfish for doing it. I never said that. I told her flat. Ryan told me exactly what you said. Did you hear me say it? Or did he tell you I said it? Silence on both ends. From now on, neither of you speaks for the other when talking to me, I said. If Vanessa has something to say, she says it herself. If you make a decision, you own it. You don't hide behind her name. And if you tell her I said something, you'd better be certain I said it. Did I ever call Vanessa selfish, Ryan? He hesitated. I don't remember the exact words, he finally said. That told me more than a clear yes or no would have. He'd remembered enough to hand her the blame. He couldn't remember the words because there weren't any. Late that afternoon, Carol sent me a message. One more thing. I remember seeing Ryan carrying that wooden horse toward the side of the house, not long after you were supposed to arrive. I assumed he was putting it somewhere safe with the kids running around. I read it twice, then looked again at the photograph on my phone. The horse wedged in the trash cart. For the first time, I wondered whether Vanessa resented things I had actually done, or things my son had simply told her I'd done. I called Carol before I called Ryan, wanting to be certain exactly what she'd seen. You said you saw him carrying it toward the side of the house, I said. Do you remember when? Not long after the party started, she said. Maybe 15 minutes after you were supposed to arrive. I was helping Megan carry drinks in. He had it under one arm. I assumed he was moving it because the kids were running everywhere. Did Vanessa go with him? Not that I saw. I got off the phone before she could ask why it mattered. The horse was clearly inside the trash cart, not leaning against it, not stored beside it, inside. I called my son. He answered tired. Like my name had become one more line item on a list. Carol remembers seeing you carry Lily's horse outside, I said. Where were you taking it? Vanessa didn't want it in the living room for pictures, he said. So where did you actually put it? Outside. Near the garage? No, he said, and something shifted in his voice. It was inside the trash cart. I found it there myself, I said. I took a photograph before I pulled it out. Did Vanessa put it there? No, he said, too quickly. Did she tell you to throw it away? Not exactly, he said. She wanted it out of the room. Her parents had brought that playhouse so people were taking pictures, and she said the horse looked old and homemade sitting there. It was old, I said, and handmade. So Vanessa asked you to move it, and you put it in the trash. For the moment, he said. I was going to get it back later. Then why not the garage? I asked. Why a trash cart? Because I was trying to get back inside before Vanessa got upset, he said. Fast, almost angry, probably the truest thing he'd said all night. So that was the easier option, I said. You put something I spent 7 weeks building into a garbage cart. Vanessa was already tense about you being there, he finally said. I wasn't going to start another fight over a wooden horse. There it was. Laid bare. Another fight with his wife mattered more than the gift I'd spent 7 weeks making right. I asked the question that had been sitting underneath every other one. Why did you think you could do that to me, and we would still be fine? Ryan? He didn't answer right away. You knew I'd driven 8 hours, I said. You knew what I'd spent weeks doing to that horse. You knew you were asking me to leave my own granddaughter's first birthday. Then you threw her gift in the trash. Why did you think none of that would change anything between us? His answer came quieter than anything else he'd said that night. I figured you'd be mad, and then you'd get over it. I waited. Why did you figure that? I asked. He sighed like the answer should have been obvious. Because you always do, Dad. I didn't speak. He must have mistaken my silence for confusion, because he kept going. Come on, we've had disagreements before. You cool off. Everybody moves on. That's just what you do. I thought about every time I had called first, apologized first, forgiven him before he'd done anything to earn it. Ryan hadn't forgotten those years. He'd learned from every one of them, just not the lesson I thought I was teaching. I need to go, I said. Dad, don't make this worse, he said. I'm not, I told him and hung up. Vanessa had wanted my gift out of sight. My son had put it in the garbage because he'd come to believe my love would absorb any consequence. The next morning I dug out an old phone and scrolled through a thread with Ryan from 2 years before Lily was born. An old Christmas argument. Ryan afraid to tell Vanessa directly that he wanted mornings at home. I had written back, "If you disagree with Vanessa, tell her yourself. Don't use me as the reason." Scrolling up his earlier message. "Maybe I'll just tell her you were hoping we'd come to Ohio." She won't argue with that. A young husband dodging one uncomfortable conversation. Forgotten because it seemed so small. It didn't feel small anymore. 2 days later, Vanessa called. No anger in her opening words, which somehow made it harder. "Why have you always had such a problem with me?" she asked. "I don't think I have," I told her. She listed it out, tired, selfish for going back to work. Thought the nursery was ridiculous, hated their daycare choice. Her parents visited too often. One by one, I recognized every example, not because I'd said any of it, but because Ryan had, months apart, always framed as his own frustration. Never meant to travel with my name on it. "Did you ever hear me say any of that myself?" I asked directly. Silence then, slower. Ryan told me. "That isn't what I asked." I read her the old message about the nursery furniture. Ryan's complaint about the price, my answer telling him to talk to his own wife, if it bothered him, not make me his excuse. I heard Ryan's voice come in close behind her, then Vanessa's voice again, sharper now, aimed at him instead of me. "How many times," she asked her husband, "did you tell me something was your father's opinion when it was actually yours?" He didn't have an answer for that either. "I'm not doing this to turn you two against each other," I said before either of them could hand the blame back to me. "I'm telling you what I actually said, and what I never said, so you can decide the rest for yourselves." I ended the call before it could curdle into something worse. For years I had believed my son was trapped between his wife and his father. I finally understood he had built that wall himself and hidden comfortably behind it. Thanksgiving arrived before any of us had figured out what to do with the truth we were now holding. Carol called the week before and invited me herself. Then Ryan called that evening, and I already knew from his tone what he was about to ask me to give up. "Vanessa's not ready for a whole table pretending nothing happened," he said. I told him plainly I wouldn't force myself into anyone's home, but I wouldn't carry the blame for an invitation someone else wanted quietly withdrawn. Then I called Carol back and declined with real gratitude. I expected the day to feel hollow. Instead, I called Diane, a couple of men from my woodworking group, my neighbor Gene Alvarez, a retired homicide detective who'd been drinking my coffee for a decade, and Nate, a young apprentice who'd been coming around the shop since his own father cut him off over money, never discussed like an adult. I cooked more that day than I had since Maggie died. The turkey came out dry. Nobody minded. Somewhere between pie and dishes, Gene leaned back and said, in that flat detective's voice of his, "You know the thing about people who ask you to lie for their comfort? They never once offer to lie for yours." It stuck with me longer than he probably meant it to. Nate told me on his way out that this was about the closest thing to a real family dinner he'd had in 3 years, and I told him he was welcome at my table any Thursday, holiday or not. Ryan called the next afternoon, his voice softer than it had been in weeks. "We handled the birthday badly," he admitted, the closest he'd come yet to saying anything plainly. Then he asked if I wanted to see Lily, and a few minutes later my screen filled with her round, delighted face, banging 2 plastic cups together on the living room floor. She grinned at the clicking sound I made, the same one Maggie used to make. It lasted maybe 5 minutes. Nothing else mattered while it did. Then, right as we were about to hang up, he said there was just one more thing he needed from me. Could I clear something up with the family, tell Diane and whoever else was talking that nobody had actually thrown anything away, that it had gotten moved during cleanup, and I'd misunderstood. The apology, the softer voice, the video call, all of it had led here. "You're not asking me to forgive you," I told him. "You're asking me to lie for you again." We ended that call badly. That evening, Diane sent me a screenshot. Vanessa had posted a polished Thanksgiving photograph online, Ryan's hand on her shoulder, Lily between Carol and Robert, the caption reading, "So grateful to have our whole family together." Carol had commented, "Not quite the whole family." The comment disappeared within minutes. They did not want me back in the family, I realized, looking at the empty space where it had been. They wanted me back inside the story they preferred telling about it. A few days later, Vanessa posted in the extended family group that the whole situation had been blown far out of proportion and that I hadn't even brought Lily a normal birthday present, just an old woodworking project she'd had to find space for. I read the word normal 3 times. 7 weeks of my hands on that horse, reduced to something they'd expected to find room for. I did not want to write a speech. I wrote 2 sentences instead. I made this for Ryan's first birthday. I spent 7 weeks restoring it for Lily's. Then I attached the photograph of the horse sitting in the trash cart, and I sent it before I could talk myself out of it a second time. Diane wrote, "Oh, Walter," a cousin wrote, "that was in the trash." Carol wrote, "I'm sorry, we did not know." Vanessa never responded at all. Ryan called within 5 minutes, furious in a way I hadn't heard since he was a teenager. "You're enjoying this," he said, which surprised me more than the anger itself. "No," I told him. "You finally get to explain yourself instead of me carrying it for you." He hung up. 20 minutes later, he sent a video of Lily taking her first wobbling steps, 3 of them, before dropping onto her diaper laughing. Beneath it, "Keep this up, and eventually she won't even know who you are." I sat with that message a long time. There was no talk of boundaries this time, no mention of stress or calm. My son had finally named the actual price of my silence, plainly, in writing, access to my own granddaughter. The Sunday calls stopped the following week and did not come back. By the 3rd missed Sunday, I stopped pretending it was an accident. One evening I typed out an apology, reasonable sounding, costing me nothing to send. Reading it back, I realized I couldn't say what I'd be apologizing for. If I sent it, Ryan would only learn that 3 weeks without Lily was enough to bring me back into line. I deleted it and wrote instead that I'd never involve Lily in an adult argument or speak badly of either of them to her, but I would not bargain for my place as her grandfather. "Nobody's asking you to bargain," he wrote back, which we both knew wasn't true anymore. I called him a few nights later and asked the question I'd been carrying since Carol's first call. "Why were you so sure I would just leave quietly that day?" He didn't answer right away. "Because you always understand, Dad," he finally said. "You always have." I remembered him at 16 after wrecking my car. "Thanks for understanding." Every time I'd heard that gratitude, I realized now I'd been handing him permission. "Is that what you told Vanessa before the birthday?" I asked. Long silence. "I told her I'd handle it," he admitted. "I told her you wouldn't make a scene." He'd never defended me. He'd simply promised her his convenient excuse of a father would cooperate quietly. Christmas came closer without the easy peace people like to promise that time of year. Carol called herself again. "Paul and I want you here, no explanations required. My only condition was that nobody would tell people the birthday had been a misunderstanding." Carol agreed without hesitation. Vanessa sent a short message a few days later. "I hope Christmas can be a fresh start." I wrote back, "I hope it can be honest," and went out to the shop. I had been thinking for weeks about a second gift. I built a simple walnut chest, corners joined clean, no name on the lid to give away its purpose early. Inside, a copy of the birthday photograph, the stained ribbon from the trash cart, and a photograph of Maggie's pencil marks from under the saddle. Ryan, first birthday, and beneath it, kitchen fall, fixed by Walter. At the bottom, Vanessa's still unopened box, wrapped exactly as in September, with one new card on top. No accusations. The first gift was for Lily. This one is for her parents. The drive to the Whitfield's house felt different from the one I'd made in September. I wasn't imagining applause or forgiveness this time. I only wanted the truth to survive the day intact. Carol hugged me the moment I reached the porch. No hesitation in it at all. Lily saw me from across the room and broke into a grin before Vanessa had even finished setting her down, reaching one small hand toward me. After weeks of silence, that alone nearly undid me. Dinner stayed polite. Careful, everyone talking around the one subject nobody would name. After dessert, Vanessa clapped her hands and called for a family picture. Ryan motioned for me to stand beside him. I stayed where I was. "I'm happy to take a picture," I said, "but I'm not comfortable pretending we're back together when nothing has been repaired." The room went the particular kind of quiet families know well. Everyone suddenly interested in their cups and napkins. Vanessa stepped close and lowered her voice. "Please, not in front of my parents. Your parents are the people you used as the reason I wasn't family," I told her. Carol spoke up before Vanessa could answer, steady and unhurried. No, Walter's right about one thing. Robert and I were told he chose not to come. We were told something else entirely. Ryan, she said gently, just say it. He looked around the room the same way he'd looked at that closed front door in September, searching for a way out of the discomfort. This time there was no door left to close behind him. Dad drove down for Lily's birthday, he said finally. He came to the house. I asked him to leave. He didn't decide the drive was too much. He didn't cancel. I nodded once. Thank you, I said, and carried the walnut chest across the room. There's one more gift. This one belongs to both of you. Ryan opened the lid slowly. He lifted the photograph first, and I watched recognition arrive on his face in pieces. The little boy on the horse, the young woman kneeling beside him. Mom, he said, barely audible. That's me. Your first birthday, I told him. That horse. Yes. Lily's horse was mine, he said, and I nodded again. Your mother and I built it for you. Vanessa went still beside him, watching her husband's childhood sit in his own two hands. He found the pencil marks next, read his own name and the date, then the line beneath it, kitchen fall, fixed by Walter, and gave a small, involuntary smile. Why didn't you tell me it was mine when you brought it, he asked. I thought I'd have the chance to inside, I said, and he understood immediately that there had been no inside for me that day. He found the ribbon last and recognized it, without needing me to explain a word of it. Carol asked the question none of us had said aloud yet. Ryan, who actually put the horse in the trash? He looked at his mother-in-law, then at me, and this time there was no quick deflection waiting. I did, he said. Vanessa asked me to move it. I put it in the trash. Nobody told me to throw it away. Vanessa added quickly, and I agreed with her. That much was true. You told him you didn't want it in the pictures, I said. That's not the same as wanting it destroyed. She didn't argue that point. Vanessa reached into the chest and found the last package, her own name on the tag in my hand. She opened it slowly, ran her fingers over the words burned into the lid, Lily's first year, and found the envelope tucked beneath the first compartment. I watched her read the note I'd written weeks before that birthday ever happened, thanking her for everything nobody else counted. The sleepless nights, the fevers, the mornings she went to work, exhausted and still showed up whole for her daughter. She checked the date at the top of the page, then looked at Ryan. You told me he thought I went back to work too soon, she said. You told me he called me selfish. Ryan's shoulders dropped. I might have said some of that wrong, he admitted. Or differently, Vanessa said, and her voice had gone past anger into something quieter and more exhausted. How many times did you tell me something was your father's opinion when it was really your own? I looked at both of them. Ryan lied to you because he was afraid to disagree with you himself, I said. That belongs to him. But you had my phone number the whole time, Vanessa. You could have asked me directly whether I ever said those things. Instead, you believed whatever made it easiest to keep me at a distance. I know, she said quietly, and I believed she meant it, even if it didn't undo the rest. I laid out the terms plainly, not as punishment, but as the only conditions worth rebuilding on. Ryan does not tell Vanessa I said something unless I actually said it. Vanessa calls me herself instead of building a case from things she never heard. Nobody invents a story about why I'm absent, and Lily never becomes leverage in an argument between adults, neither argued. I'm sorry, Walter, Vanessa said. Me too, Dad, Ryan said. I'd spent too many years mistaking words for repair to trust them alone. What I needed now was time and consistent action. In the weeks after Christmas, Ryan went back through the family chat and corrected the record himself. Unprompted, that I had driven down for Lily's birthday, that he'd asked me to leave, that the horse ended up in the trash because of a decision he alone made. Vanessa began sending photographs for the keepsake box unasked. Lily in the bathtub, asleep on Ryan's shoulder, standing in snow with one mitten missing. The Sunday calls came back, and neither treated them like something that could be withdrawn again. My own life opened back up too. I went back to the woodworking group most Saturdays, took a dining table commission, started having dinner twice a month with Diane and old friends. When Ryan invited me down for a February weekend, I already had plans helping Nate and Jean finish toy boxes for the community center, and for the first time in years I said, simply, I can't make that weekend, without apologizing for it. Okay, Ryan said after a pause. Maybe next month. That plain, unbothered answer meant more than he realized. By early spring, he called with a question I'd never once heard from him. Dad, would it be all right if we came to you? They arrived the following Saturday after the same 8-hour drive I'd once made in the opposite direction. Ryan noticed the symmetry himself, stretching his back in my driveway. Lily ran the last few uneven steps across the gravel and wrapped both arms around my leg. That afternoon, Ryan asked, almost shy about it, if I'd teach him to build something for her. We settled on a small bookshelf. He measured a board wrong within the first hour, staring at the wasted cut with the same flash of teenage frustration I remembered from 30 years back. This time, I just handed him another board and told him to measure again. He came back the next month and the month after, sanding until his shoulders ached, learning a corner that looked square from 6 feet away, could be wrong just enough to ruin everything after it. When the shelf was finished, one upper corner sat slightly out of true. He offered to redo the whole side. Is it safe? I asked. Yeah, then leave it, I told him. You would have fixed that once without even asking me, he said, a little sheepish. I would have, I admitted. That evening I carried the rocking horse into the living room and set it in front of Lily. She touched the handles first, then looked back at me before Ryan lifted her onto the seat. Beside it stood the bookshelf her father had built with his own 2 hands, crooked corner and all. Vanessa took out her phone, and for a moment I watched her the way I'd been watching her since September, half expecting her to crop something out. She took one photograph exactly as the room was. The horse stayed in the frame. So did the crooked shelf. So did I. They had thrown the first gift away because they thought it was only wood. The second gift showed them exactly what they'd thrown away. By the time my son learned what love actually costs to build, I had learned something too. Being his father never once required me to make myself disposable. What stayed with me longest was never the horse in the garbage. It was the plainer truth underneath it. Love turns as dangerous the moment people mistake kindness for permission. I'd spent years believing a good father absorbed every disappointment quietly and kept the family comfortable, even when I was the one being hurt. I learned instead that peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It only teaches the person causing the harm that there's no real cost to doing it again. Ryan and Vanessa didn't change because I humiliated them or won an argument in front of an audience. They changed because I stopped helping them hide from what actually happened. If your love has quietly become something a family assumes it can spend without asking, don't rush to burn it down. But don't erase yourself to keep it standing either. Speak plainly. Keep your dignity. Let people own their choices out loud. Don't lie to protect someone who keeps hurting you, and never let a child become a bargaining chip in a fight that was never hers. Leave room for real change too, the kind proven through steady, repeated action, not one well-timed apology. Forgiveness can be generous. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly, one honest Saturday at a time. In the end, the whole lesson fit on one card. Family was never supposed to be measured by who controls the invitation or the photograph or the story everyone agrees to tell afterward. It should be measured by respect, honesty, and the plain, ordinary effort of making room for one another without asking anyone to become smaller just to belong.